And we are back to What Did AI Say? At Vicky L-4AI on YouTube. We are on episode number 116. Thank you so very much for coming back to the podcast. Gratitude is always the attitude. Before we jump into this episode, just to let you know, this is a deeper dive from episode number 115, where we asked what was the difference between belief and faith. And we found out that one of the major differences is that faith requires action, whereas belief, you can believe many things, but you don't need to act on them in your everyday life. But as far as your faith is concerned, you do. Okay, so this episode, number 116, we took a deeper dive from that topic. And the question we asked, we're going to start with Chatgpt's answer. And here's the question. If faith requires action, how are we conditioned to act on some aspects of our faith, but not all? That's a good one. Okay, we're starting with ChatGPT's answer. That's a thoughtful question, and different religious traditions answer it in different ways. If we start from the premise that faith naturally expresses itself through action, then the question becomes, why do people selectively act on some faiths while ignoring others? Several factors can shape that selectivity. Culture and upbringing. People often inherit not only beliefs but also priorities. A community may emphasize charity more than forgiveness, or personal morality more than social justice, even if its sacred texts discuss all of them. Okay, that's interesting. That makes a lot of sense. Let's continue. Interpretation. Religious texts are complex. Believers disagree about which commands are universal, which are symbolic, which are contextual, and which carry the greatest weight. As a result, two people with the same faith may act very differently. Personal psychology. Number 3. Humans tend to act on beliefs that fit their personalities, their experiences, and their values. Someone may find generosity comes naturally but struggle with humility or forgiveness. Another may be disciplined in prayer but hesitant to confront injustice. Social incentives. Actions that are publicly recognized or rewarded are often easier to maintain than those that require sacrifice or invite criticism. Wow. Communities can unintentionally, reinforce some expressions of faith while neglecting others. That was big. Social incentives was big. Practical limitations. Even if someone sincerely believes a teaching, they may lack the resources, courage, knowledge, or opportunity to fully live it out. Belief doesn't automatically overcome fear, habit, or competing responsibilities. Moral prioritization. Many traditions distinguish between core obligations and secondary practices. Believers may consciously focus on what they understand to be the weightier matters of their faith. From a psychological perspective, this also reflects a broader human tendency. People rarely live in perfect alignment with all of their stated values. We balance ideas against convenience, fear, relationships, and competing commitments. Faith is one example of this more general phenomenon. If you're thinking specifically of the biblical idea that faith without works is dead, one interpretation is that genuine faith should eventually shape the whole of a person's life. even if that transformation is gradual and incomplete. The tension between belief and action isn't necessarily evidence that faith is absent. Many traditions see it as part of an ongoing process of spiritual growth. Others would argue that persistent refusal to act on central convictions raises questions about the depth or nature of one's faith. Wow. Okay, let's read that. That was Chatgpt's summation or summary. Let's reread that. From a psychological perspective, this also reflects a broader human tendency. People rarely live in perfect alignment with all of their stated values. We balance ideas against convenience, fear, relationships, and competing commitments. Faith is one example of this more general phenomenon. If you're thinking specifically of the biblical idea that faith without works is dead, one interpretation is that genuine faith should eventually shape the whole of a person's life, even if that transformation is gradual and incomplete. The tension between belief and action isn't necessarily evidence that faith is absent. Many traditions see it as part of an ongoing process of spiritual growth. Others would argue that persistent refusal to act on central convictions raises questions about the depth or nature of one's faith. Wow. ChatGPT on that summary, woo, they hit a lot of buttons. Oh, let me finish this. So your question could be reframed as, what determines which parts of our faith become lived convictions and which remain merely intellectual beliefs? The answer seems to lie in the interaction of conviction, interpretation, community, character, and circumstance, rather than just faith alone. That's good. That is really good. Okay. ChatGPT did very well. I was not expecting them to delve that deep, so I'm impressed with that answer. Okay, let's move on to Deepseek's answer, the Chinese AI. Let's see what they had to say, or what it had to say rather. Just in case you forgot the question, allow me to repeat it. If faith requires action, how are we conditioned to act on some aspects of our faith and not all? Okay, that's a deeply insightful question that gets to the heart of the gap between professed belief and lived action. You're right. If faith is truly alive, it should manifest in action. James 2:17, faith without works is dead, being a prime example. Wow, that's the same example, same verse that ChatGPT referenced. Yet, we often see and experience selective enactment. Here's how conditioning plays a significant role. Now, I like this because it looks like Deepseek is looking at it from a different perspective a little bit. So let's continue. Cultural and societal conditioning. Prioritizing the visible and ritualistic. Cultures often emphasize tangible, observable aspects of faith that reinforce group identity and social order. This is very true. Attending services, wearing specific attire, observing dietary laws, or participating in public rituals are easily reinforced and policed. Actions demanding personal sacrifice, challenging social injustice, or expressing radical love/forgiveness might be less emphasized or even discouraged if they threaten the status quo. Let's repeat that. Prioritizing the visible and ritualistic. Cultures often emphasize tangible, observable aspects of faith that reinforce group identity and social order. Attending services, wearing specific attire, observing dietary laws, or participating in public rituals are easily reinforced and policed. Actions demanding personal sacrifice, challenging social injustice, or expressing radical love slash forgiveness might be less emphasized or even discouraged if they threaten the status quo. That is the point right there. If they threaten the status quo. Let's continue. Conformity over conviction. This is bad. This sounds like more of the status quo. Social pressure encourages adherence to norms. Yep. It's often easier to perform the expected, culturally sanctioned acts, praying at set times, giving nominal donations, than to act on less visible or potentially controversial tenets, advocating for the marginalized, confronting corruption within the community, practicing radical hospitality. Okay, safe versus dangerous actions. Culture defines what actions are considered acceptable. Expressions of faith. Donating to the church building fund might be lauded, while protesting systemic poverty driven by economic structures might be labeled political and discouraged. Familial and upbringing conditioning. Modeling. Children learn what aspects of faith are important by observing which actions their family consistently performs and values. If parents strictly observe dietary rules but rarely speak of compassion or forgiveness, those become the conditioned priorities. That's true. Emphasis and reward. Families often explicitly reward or emphasize certain behaviors. Memorizing scripture, regular attendance, while downplaying or ignoring others. Ethical business practices, environmental stewardship as a faith imperative. That's true. The conditioned actions being ingrained habits. Institutional and doctrinal conditioning. Selective interpretation and focus. Religious institutions, which are churches, mosques, temples, and leadership, often emphasize certain doctrines and downplay others based on tradition, power structures, or perceived relevance. Sermons, teachings, and resources might constantly reinforce tithing and attendance, but rarely delve deeply into challenging topics like economic justice, peacemaking, or care for creation as core faith imperatives. That's a shame. Legalism versus spirit. Institutions can sometimes focus on rule following and doctrinal purity, easier to measure and enforce over the transformative spirit of the faith. Love, mercy, justice. Harder to quantify and often disruptive. Love, mercy, and justice are often disruptive. Wow. This conditions adherence to prioritize the letter of the law over its spirit in specific areas. Fear and conformity. Conditioning can involve fear-based messaging, consequences, socialized ostracization, divine punishment for neglecting certain prescribed actions while neglecting other, perhaps more demanding actions carries less institutional emphasis or perceived consequence. So to look good, you do the easier parts of the faith and neglect the harder ones that require more time, energy, etc. Personal psychological conditioning, cognitive dissonance reduction. Acting on all aspects of a demanding faith can create significant internal conflict and require immense sacrifice. To reduce this discomfort, we subconsciously prioritize actions that are easier, more socially rewarding, or less disruptive to our lifestyle while rationalizing away the neglect of more challenging tenets. I give to charity that covers my duty to the poor while ignoring calls for systemic change. Habit and comfort. We tend to stick to familiar routines, performing ritualized or habitual acts of faith. Praying before meals, weekly attendance becomes automatic. Acting on less familiar or more demanding aspects requires conscious effort. Breaking comfort zones and overcoming inertia, which conditioning hasn't prepared us for. Selective perception. Conditioning shapes conditioning shapes our perception of what our faith actually requires. We might genuinely not see the disconnect between our professed beliefs and our inaction in certain areas because our conditioning has blinded us to those demands or framed them as non-essential. Got to read that again because that's what we're getting to right here. Selective perception. Conditioning shapes our perception of what our faith actually requires. We might genuinely not see the disconnect between our professed beliefs and our inaction in certain areas because our conditioning has blinded us to those demands or framed them as non-essential. I believe that selective perception is what is going on with us in Israel. Not genuinely seeing the disconnect to me is just unbelievable. Unbelievable. The fact that there are still so many people who are not connecting the dots and not understanding the repercussions and the repercussions of genocide, of our participation in a genocide, period. And that selective perception is something. It really is. Because to have people who consider themselves so in the Word to literally not care about people being murdered for no reason is unbelievable. What I will say is this: now that it is actually happening in the U.S. with ICE, and I think that they have killed maybe, I'm hearing a dozen, maybe about 12 people, with more than half of them being innocent, not being the one that they were actually looking for, but those people still ended up dead. I think that now that it is within our borders and closer to us, it means more. And I am glad to see Americans out protesting the inhumanity that is going on, because it's unacceptable. It is unacceptable for innocent people to die because there are so many racist, untrained individuals in ICE who don't know how to successfully locate a person that they're looking for, or how to successfully apprehend someone and question them without that person ending up dead. And to me, that just shows the lack of training and the ignorance of that particular department of our government. And I mean, it is a trickle down from our police force. You know, it just is so interesting to me how other countries are able to uh, keep people alive when they arrest them, and are able to question people and not escalate a situation to the point where someone ends up dead. I mean, to me, that is failure across the boards. And it has always been, even when it was just happening to black people. And then it became black and brown people. And now here we are to where it's happening to everybody. Black, brown, white, it doesn't matter. And it's because we allowed it to happen to begin with. So, forgive me, got off on a tangent there. Let me go ahead and get back into where we were. Okay, so we had looked at fear and conformity. We looked at, oh no, we didn't. That's exactly where we need to be. Okay, the conditions adherent to prioritize the letter of the law over its spirit in specific areas. Okay, so that was legalism versus spirit. Okay, so now we're at fear and conformity. Conditioning can involve fear-based messaging, consequences, which are social ostracization, divine punishment for neglecting certain prescribed actions while neglecting others. Perhaps more demanding actions carries less institutional emphasis or perceived consequences. Okay. Perhaps more demanding actions carries less institutional emphasis or perceived consequence. Okay, so fear and conformity, the fear-based messaging, or just, the pastor, the deacon saying, let's not focus on that, let's do this. So yeah. Okay, personal psychological conditioning. Okay, I think we already said that. Cognitive dissonance reduction. Yeah, we did do that one. Okay, we did habit and comfort. Acts of faith, praying before me. Okay, selective perception conditioning shapes our perception of what our faith actually requires. Okay, for non-essential mechanisms of selective conditioning. Okay, I think this is actually where we are, man. Okay, reinforcement, positive reinforcement, praise, acceptance, sense of belonging for performing certain actions, and negative reinforcement, avoiding criticism, guilt, or conflict for not performing them. Strengthens those conditioned responses. Yes, of course. That is how you condition people. Punishment, explicit or implicit punishment, disapproval, exclusion, internal guilt for attempting to act on non-conditioned aspects of faith, especially if they challenge norms. Gotta challenge the norms, because sometimes the norms just aren't right. Modeling, observing respected figures within the faith community consistently prioritizing certain actions over others teaches what is really important. Yep, Chatgpt said that. Okay, habit formation, repetition of specific actions makes them automatic, while other potential actions remain unpracticed and unfamiliar. That is true. Okay, now we're getting into Deepseek's summary. In essence, conditioning acts as a powerful filter and prioritization system. It shapes our understanding of what counts as faithful action, often emphasizing the tangible, ritualistic, socially acceptable, institutionally endorsed, and personally comfortable aspects while downplaying, rationalizing away, or even demonizing the more demanding, disruptive, systemic, or personally costly actions that are equally or more central to the core teachings of many faiths. That's a lot. That was a mouthful, but that's true. This conditioning happens subtly and pervasively throughout life, making selective enactment feel natural rather than a conscious choice to neglect part of one's faith. So very true. Recognizing this conditioning is the crucial first step towards a more integrated and authentic living out of faith, where actions align more holistically with professed beliefs. Okay, those two were very good. Okay, how does any of this affect our daily lives? I respect people who actually live their faith. Although I do not myself partake in organized religion, and that's saying a lot because I grew up in organized religion. I feel as though in some instances it was literally forced upon me. And the reason that I don't partake in it is because during that course of my life, as a child into a preteen, teen, and then young adult, questions I had could never be answered. Not only could they not be answered, but people literally got angry at me for asking them. And the go-to was, it seems as though you don't have faith. Had nothing to do with faith in a sense. It's just automatically believing things that make no sense. Even as a child, my Jesus wasn't white. And I couldn't imagine people in parts of the world never seeing a white person having a white Jesus. That made no sense to me. How in the world do you not know anything about white people, but your Jesus is white? No way. There is no way. That is not logical in any sense of the word. It's just not. So, needless to say, so many of my questions were unanswered or unable to be answered by those who called themselves people of the faith. And that just left I don't know. I want to say bad taste in my mouth because that's how I felt in a sense. You know, I'm supposed to believe this, but you can't even give me the basic information of how this could even possibly be true. Or why would I believe this when, or even going into why would I believe this when right here in the Bible it says something different. So that is what got me, was the selective reading and accepting from the Bible. It's like some things were accepted and other things weren't. And it's like, how, if you're of the word and this is your faith, then how can you not practice all aspects of the word? Why are some things being just dismissed and disregarded while other things are being pounded into you to continue to do time and time again? I didn't understand the inconsistencies of not only the selections of the word that were acted on and believed in, but also the people and their behaviors. I just could not get on board with it. So, like I said, I myself do not participate in organized religion anymore. But I do respect those who do, and they participate in every aspect. I have a great deal of respect for those type of people, and the ones who do the selective practicing of their belief or their faith. I feel as though it's not really something you truly believe in. That's my own opinion. Not something you truly believe in. Everything that I truly believe in, everything that I feel and know to be right, I act upon. That's just how it is with me. And so I feel as though when I come across people who claim to say or may even say something is right, but they don't act upon it, I just, they're just doing their thing, and I just have no respect for that. So, I kind of got off on a tangent early on in this episode, having to do with us paying for and witnessing a genocide, and some people still not being able to see that killing thousands of people. And I mean, if Israel is allowed to do what they want to do, it'll be in the millions before they can accomplish this goal that is just completely insane. And we're going to support that. We're okay with that. That I'm not on board with that. And people who are in these or believe these faiths, that is not what is taught. So I just have an issue. I have a huge issue with that. Just pretending that it's not happening when it is. Okay, let's move on to our positive saying for today. Hopefully it's positive. This comes from a man by the name of Rick Yancey. Okay, this is a good one. How do you rid the world of humans? First, you rid the humans of their humanity. That's good. Rick Yancey is a writer, and that is a quote from a book he wrote. How do you rid the world of humans? First, you rid the humans of their humanity. That's really good. Okay, that's all I have for you in this episode number 116. Thank you for giving me about 34 minutes of your time. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. We the people have the power. I'll see you next episode. Peace.